Hello everyone, welcome to Loops and Leather. My name is Lori, your host here at Loops and Leather and the creator behind all of the goodies that you can find on my website, loopsandleather.com. I wanted to take a few minutes today and just share a little bit about reading weaving drafts. I'm doing this in preparation for a project that I'm going to be sharing from start to finish at the request of one of my subscribers. She asked if I can show how I do my weaving from warping right on through. So the very beginning of any project with a pattern is going to require a weaving draft. You know, sometimes, actually a lot of times, I just freestyle weave where I just pick some colors and yarns that I think are going to work well together, and I will just warp randomly. I might do a solid color, I might mix in some textured yarn, and then I just weave again with either a plain weave or if I'm going to use some textured yarn in the weft. But it's just free form and it's very liberating because you're not following a pattern. But other times I do like using a pattern. I like specific designs. So for this project that I'm going to be sharing, I'm going to be doing houndstooth. Now, I did recently share a video on how to weave pinwheels, which is much more complicated on a rigid heddle loom. Houndstooth is similar to the pinwheel, but it's not quite as complicated and doesn't require all those pickup sticks. So you can do this with just one heddle, and you don't need any pickup sticks. You don't need a second heddle or a heddle block, anything fancy like that. You can also do houndstooth on 4-shaft looms, 8-shaft looms. You can get really, really intricate with houndstooth, but the basic pattern you can do on a rigid heddle loom. So that's why I'm sharing this particular draft. This draft can be used for any type of loom. And the reason that we know that is because this has across the top, up, down, up, down. And on a rigid heddle loom, this would represent up shed, down shed, or slots and holes, okay? So we also know this will work for a rigid heddle because it's only left, right, which also represents your up, down options on a rigid heddle loom. If this required multiple passes of the same color that, you had a different order, it may not be adaptable to a rigid heddle. But this one most definitely is. Makes it a little bit unique. So let's talk about what these little graph charts mean. So across the top, like I said, this represents slots and holes. So when you're threading your warp, if you start either from left to right or right to left, it really doesn't matter with this pattern, you would choose to thread a slot in white, a hole in white, a slot in green, a hole in green, slot in white, hole in white, slot in green, hole in green. And you're just going to alternate that all the way across to whatever width you want, okay? Similarly, on a floor loom or table loom, you would be threading in either shaft 1 or shaft 2. So when you have the shafts, you have actual metal or thread heddles. So for threading on a table loom or floor loom, you would choose the heddle on shaft 1 would be white. The heddle on shaft 2 would be white. Shaft 1, you would go back to shaft 1 would be green. Back to shaft 2 would be green. And you would just alternate back and forth between shafts 1 and 2. And you'll do 2 threads of your warp threads in white, then 2 in green, 2 in white, 2 in green, or whatever color you want to choose. On the side of weaving drafts, this is where it tells you what order you're going to pass your weft yarn across your weaving, and in this case also what color. So you have 2 passes of green, or picks, we call them picks as well. So you're going to have 2 picks of green, 2 picks of white, 2 picks of green, 2 picks of white. So for rigid heddle weavers, it's a simple up, down, up, down. So you're going to do up shed, pass a green, down shed, pass a green, up shed, pass a white, down shed, pass a white. Again, all the way down to whatever length you want. You're just alternating up and down on your reed, your heddle, rigid heddle, and alternating what colors. For houndstooth, your pattern really comes from how you have the colors threaded. So that's really the key, and is super important, is that you're doing 2, 2, 2, 2. For floor looms and table looms, we're going to pay a little bit more attention to this little box. This is the intersection of your heddles and shafts versus your weft weaving pattern. So on a table loom, you usually have little levers. So for this pattern, lever 1 and lever 2, you're only going to be doing up, down, up, down. It's a plain weave. All right. On a floor loom, you're going to tie one of your petals to shaft 1 and one of your petals to shaft 2. And you're only going to use 2 shafts and 2 petals. Again, your treadling pattern or your lever pattern on a table loom is just going to be 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Super straightforward draft, really simple. Anybody can do it, and you get great results. It's a very neat classic pattern. I love houndstooth. It was popular 40 years ago. It's popular today. You can't go wrong with a houndstooth weave. So that's it for a basic pattern. I am going to jump real quickly to the draft that I'm going to use for the project that's coming up. So let's switch over to this a little bit fancier 4-shaft houndstooth pattern. Let me make sure that you can see this properly. Yes, okay. So I've chosen this because I like the detail in it. I like these little extra lines in here. It's just a pretty pattern. There's all different variations. But for this pattern, you can see that there are 4 shafts being used. So you would kind of rule out a rigid heddle unless you actually got a second heddle, or possibly pickup sticks. You could, modify it, I guess, to use pickup sticks. But for now, I'm just going to focus on floor looms and table looms where you have at least 4 shafts. So our 4 shafts, we know that we are going to thread in order. If we actually, with this pattern, we're going to start and we're going to go right to left. It's a little backwards. But we're going to start with our 4th shaft. So we're going to string our first warp thread through a heddle on shaft 4. Then the next in shaft 3, the next in shaft 2, the next in shaft 1. Then we're going to jump back up to shaft 4 and shaft 3. This houndstooth pattern, instead of doing 2 warp threads and 2 weft threads of each color, this does 6. This is 6 and 6. And that's what gives us this added detail in the final piece. So as you have more shafts available to you, you definitely have more options as far as detail and intricacy in patterns. My goodness, I've seen some patterns with 20-something shafts. I'm like, holy cow, I can't even imagine threading that. But this is a nice 4-shaft pattern. So we're going to thread 6 warp threads. For my project, I'm using dark brown and light tan. So we're going to thread 6 warp threads in dark brown, 6 warp threads in tan, and then repeat 6 warp threads in dark brown, 6 in tan, and we're just going to work our way across this draft until we get to the width that we want. But just remember it's in 6, and so it's a little bit offset, which is actually what gives us this cool design. For our lift pattern on a table loom, which is what I'm going to be using, I would, for my first weft pass, I'm going to start here because I'm reading top down. I am going to use the levers that are going to raise shafts 1 and shafts 4. On my next weft pass, I'm going to raise the shafts 3 and 4. My third weft pass, I'm going to raise shafts 2 and 3. And on my fourth weft pass, I'm going to raise shafts 1 and 2. So on a table loom with levers, I'm actually pushing down the levers for 1 and 4, 3, 4, then 2, 3, and finally 1, 2. And then I'm going to jump back up over here to 1, 4, and just keep working my way down as notated here in this repeat. It's 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1. But 4 represents a lift of 1 and 4. 3 represents a lift of shafts 2 and 3. So you're pushing down multiple levers. And I'll demonstrate that when we actually get this on the loom and start weaving. If you're using a floor loom for this pattern, this is your tie-up. So for your petal 4, you are going to attach petal 4 to raise shafts 1 and 4. For your petal 3, you're going to tie that to raise up shafts 3 and 4. For petal 2, you are going to tie it to raise shafts 2 and 3. And for petal 1, you're going to tie it to raise shafts 1 and 2. You can reverse this around a little bit when you're tying up your petals. If you would rather go, in left to right order, you could switch it up. Make this petal 1, petal 2, petal 3, and petal 4. It's just kind of up to you. You have to do the mental conversion if you change around how you tie up versus the draft. But this is your tie-up. This box up here is always going to be your tie-up, no matter if you're, how many shafts there are. It'll tell you what petal needs to raise what shafts. For table looms, it tells you which levers you need to push down to raise those shafts. And, of course, on a rigid heddle loom, this really kind of all goes out the window. It's entirely different. So you'll also notice, as we did 6 of each warp thread across, we're also doing 6 weft passes across as well. So we're going to do 6 passes of light tan, 6 passes of dark brown, and then continue on 6 of light, 6 of dark, and that will give us this amazing pattern on our finished piece. So I hope this helps kind of set some groundwork and helps people understand how to read drafts, at least at a basic level. And I think that if you watch this and then we go through the actual warping of the table loom and how we raise the shafts, it'll all make a lot more sense. So please like and subscribe. Definitely subscribe to my channel, because then you'll get a notification in YouTube telling you I posted the next video. And you can just follow the progression of this project from reading the draft to winding the warp and warping the loom, and then actually going through weaving with me and showing you how a table loom operates versus a rigid heddle or a floor loom. So stay tuned. Please like and subscribe. If you have any questions, if you want clarification on anything that I kind of reviewed today, don't hesitate to post it in the comments. We all are learning. I don't care how long people have been doing something. We all learn all the time. Life gets boring if we stop learning. So as I learn, I love to share with everyone. I do spend a lot of time reading, watching other videos, participating in a bunch of weaving groups, and I'm just trying to bring all of that information together in one place and sharing it with other new weavers in hopes that it will make things a little bit easier to understand, maybe easier to follow, and trying to sort through some of the math and what things mean, how to translate it, how you actually weave with it. So like, subscribe, share, comment. Really appreciate all of the subscribers. I was super excited to see that I got up over 100 subscribers. It's a big deal for me. I'm just a small, one person, small farm, and independent weavers. So I was really excited to see that, and I sure appreciate all of you being here. So join me again soon. I'm going to be whipping through this project because I'm super excited to get started, and hope it helps some of you. And if you want to weave along, please feel free, grab some yarn. I'm going to be doing the warping board next. Take care, everyone. See you soon.